G'day guys, welcome to lesson 7. What we're going to look at today is social institutions here. I hope you notice as well on the bottom left hand side of your screen should be, oh actually no, I think I put it here. There should be a cool little logo, so just upping it up, keeping you guys on your toes. So what we're going to look at today are all the different social institutions that shape society, and we're going to learn how we both simultaneously shape them and how they shape us at the same time. So we're going to break it down into groups: family, school, peers, work, government, media, and the legal system. So if you guys can make sure that you highlight and date lesson 7 here, and it's on page 23, and we'll get started. So, social institutions. Now we've looked at this. This mainly comes under the concept of society, and when we looked at our definition of it a bit further up, society is the context in which we live our lives. So our family, friends, community, schools, workplace, social media, and social groups we belong to are all social institutions. So it's this place that we're interacting with other people, and that we sort of share our role within society within these social institutions. So a social institution will exist for a common purpose or function. So for example, my role here, school's role is to educate you guys, but my role as a teacher is to provide that education directly to you. Your social role within the institution or school is to learn so that you can become a functioning member of society. It's linked to social expectations, which we looked at last week, but the idea that these institutions are the places or society itself where you become informed about that. So for example, family is existing to raise children, and that the media, for example, is another social institution. So what we mean by media here is things like television, news, those kind of outlets, and they exist to communicate with us and to inform citizens as well on happenings within their micro, macro, and meso, as Asher would say, worlds. And that, again, that's our next point. They exist on all levels. So if we look at micro, we've got examples of, say, family. That's an example of a social institution. At meso, or meso, we have school and work. At micro, your peers also appear here as well, and then at a macro level we have the legal system, media, and government. So what I want you guys to do is, I've listed them all here. What I would like you guys to do is to highlight these 3 different colors like so. This is just something I thought of on the fly, which is always fun. And then I want you guys to highlight where family belongs to, where school belongs to, government belongs to, etc. So you should have, so say family, for example, is a micro, school, for example, is a meso, and government is an example of macro. Can you do the other 1, 2, 3, 4, the other 4 remaining there? Just, it's always important for us to be identifying and making links between concepts. So what we're going to do this lesson is essentially you're going to find a subtitle of all the different social institutions. There's 7 in total that we're looking at in the syllabus today, and we're going to break down each of those 7, and we have to look at how they shape us and how we shape them. So how society simultaneously creates these social institutions that shape us, but how we also simultaneously shape those social institutions based off our beliefs, needs, and wants as a society as well. So it's going to go like this in order. Step 1 is to read and highlight each social institution summary, which is basically at the top here. Okay, so I've kind of done a summary after each social institution that you can find there, etc. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to then list the concepts that relate to each social institution. So for example, family, there's a spot here for related concepts, which I've put there. You might find more, you might find less. Try thinking the main ones, and then what I've then done later on is I've left them blank for you guys to put in. So for example, peers, some related concepts you might put there. Persons would be one, culture might be another, identity could be another, so power, all that kind of thing. So try and relating as many concepts as you can to each of the social institutions. And then step 3 is to explain how the social institution shapes the individual. So essentially, how does that institution influence you? Now, I've done family as an example here, but what you guys will end up doing is writing them on your own. Now, this would be a really good lesson to make sure that you work together in groups, because some of you might have a bit more idea, and it works well to work with others anyway. Remember, 1 hour of study with a group is equal to 3 hours individual, so it's really beneficial for you guys to do that. And then number 4 is to explain how individuals shape social institutions. So again, say, I've made a typo in all of them. So that should say school. That should say school. You might want to go ahead and fix all these up. I'm going to do it right now. I'll do that a bit later when the video is done. But yeah, make sure you change all those. So essentially, for example, if we were to look at school, how is the individual shaped by school? AKA, how does school influence you? Obviously, we give you an education. We're instilling certain values and skills into you that can help influence your identity so that you can fit the mold of our Western culture and society, and so that you're an informed and active member of society. So that might be something along the lines of how school shapes you. But then in turn, how do you influence school? So you guys have your own, I guess, unique personalities. You've grown up in a unique culture, so I guess different ways that you learn might influence the school. I guess this class is an example of that. But then you want to do the same with all your other social institutions. So what I've done as examples, and I'll talk you through these, so that was a lot of instruction, but I've done family and government and legal system as an example here for you. So we'll go through that together. So the first one is to highlight our summary and read it. So family. So across all cultures, so every culture in the world, every country, family plays a vital role in shaping the individual. The parents are primary socialization agents who nurture and teach individuals how to live. Now, we haven't quite got up. I would highlight this. This is an important concept. We learn more about it in our next topic. But a socialization agent is someone who essentially influences how you grow up. And the word that we've used as primary here means that they are the main source, or the number one, or the main contributing factor. If we said something was secondary, in this context it would be not at the top but to the side. So a secondary socialization agent might be a teacher. I can still influence you, but I don't influence you as much as your parents do. Our related concepts that I've linked to family are persons, culture, environment, identity, power, and authority. Authority because there's parents in there, power because you might have siblings. Identity, your last name often is kind of the identifying factor of your family. The environment which you grow up usually affects the family dynamic that you have. Culture is all the beliefs and values that your family will have and pertain. And then persons is things, you got your mum, dad, brother, sister, etc. Aunties, uncles, grandparents. So there's a lot of different persons in family. So how is the individual shaped by family? So also known as how does family influence you? So family, being the primary socialization agent, shapes the individual by raising them in an environment which infers the parents' values and beliefs onto the child. Infers here means they give it to you. Essentially, it's transferring from one place to another. So say your parents grew up in a religious household, you're more likely to adopt their values and beliefs because they've raised you in that way, and vice versa. It might be if one particular parent's really into a certain type of sport or a certain type of food, or music, you're more likely to interact and identify and engage with that music, value, belief, sport, whatever it is. And then, so these examples can be hypothetical. They don't have to be explicit, although they can be if you want. And then the second part of our syllabus dot point is, how does the individual shape the family? So for example, how do you shape the family? So the individual can shape the family through their beliefs and values, which influence the dynamic of the group. So individual beliefs and values. For example, an individual within the family may have a job in the army and bring a strong sense of responsibility and patriotism to the family dynamic. So that may happen. Alternatively, an individual within the family might have also been born with a certain health or mental condition, autism for example, and this will therefore impact the perceptions that the family might have on autism, as they could interact with it frequently and engage with it different to most other people. So that's just an example of how individuals can shape the family. So say with this example here, or it might not be autism, it might be any other kind of health condition, might be cerebral palsy, whatever it is. If you're in a family and a member of your family has some kind of illness, you've grown up knowing what that is, you're going to understand that at a deeper level, and that is going to obviously shape your family. Beliefs and values, the types of activities you might do in and around the place. So there again, just some hypothetical examples that we can use. So that's how like a fully complete one will look. So let's say when you go to do school, work with the people around you to try and come up with some answers there. I'll read through government and the legal system as our last one, and then I'll get to the next few pages. So with government and the legal system, they've got significant control over all aspects of our life at a micro, meso and macro level. They do operate at a macro level, but the decisions they make at a macro level can influence our micro and meso world. So for example, the government regulating that you guys have to stay in school until you're 17 affects your meso world, even though it was a macro decision. So yeah, the rules and regulations that the state, so the state here is just another word for saying government, puts in place significantly affects what we do. So some related concepts here, I've left it blank. Now obviously I want you guys to fill that in, but from the get-go, two big ones here would obviously be authority and culture. And if you want to put some more in there that you can think of, there's a few more I can think of that can go in there as well. As long as you can justify why you're putting that concept in there, it's good enough for me. I've still done this though. So how is the individual shaped by, now that again, this, you're going to have to cross all these out. I've obviously just cut and paste that question, and I've remembered to change these bits, but just not this bit. So make sure you change that. So how is the individual shaped by the government? So for example, how does the government and legal system influence you? So government laws prescribe to individuals what they can and can't do, therefore shaping their behaviour and actions. So laws around driving and ethics, for example. So there's speed limits with driving, there's traffic lights, there's wearing your seatbelt. All of these is enforced by the government. In regards to ethics, physically assaulting someone or stealing their property is considered against the law. So obviously that's going to shape our behaviour. We're less likely to do that because the culture and the laws that the government has said that and mandated that that's not allowed. So then how does the individual shape the government? So recently, in the last few years, the government legislated that marriage can be between the same sex instead of just the opposite. So that is a reflection of individuals shaping the government, because individual beliefs and values had changed over time, and therefore there was a lot of pressure put on the government to change that law, and it did. So that's an example of how an individual can shape and influence the government and legal system. Now it says legal system here and government here. I've put them under the one because they're one and the same thing. So don't get too concerned if they're separate up here and they read separate in the syllabus. They're the same thing, so don't worry too much. So with that being said, I'll get you guys to go through and do school, peers, work and the media. If you have any troubles with it during the week, come and see me. There's one thing I thought would be really interesting to look at as well, is a case study. You may or may not have heard of this, called the Stanford prison experiment. So the reason I've chosen this as a case study is because here we're looking at essentially how social institutions influence us and how we influence social institutions. So what this case study did, this wouldn't be considered ethical research nowadays, it probably wasn't back then either, but in 1971, essentially what happened is this professor from Stanford University, he wanted to look at the psychological effects of perceived power and authority on people and looking at the dynamics that that could play out with. So what he wanted to do was put that in the context of prisoners and prison officers. So what he did is he got a bunch of people to volunteer at the university, and they were assigned a role, either prisoners or prison guards. And what he did is he created this mock prison in a basement at the university, and he gave himself, his name was Zimbardo, and he gave himself the role of superintendent, which is like the warden or the boss of the prison. So what he ended up doing is he just put them in those perceived roles, and he just kind of wanted to watch and observe what would happen, and it's actually quite amazing what ended up happening. They had to cancel the experiment after 6 days because it got so bad. So what happened is that the students really quickly embraced their roles, and a lot of them took on physical punishment. So these volunteers, a lot of them were friends and they knew each other. But some of the prison guards subjected the prisoners to psychological torture. A lot of them accepted the abuse because they internalized the role of the prisoner and criminal, like they had done something wrong and they deserved it. It was absolutely fascinating what's happening. So there's this YouTube clip here. I'll click it so just in case the link doesn't work, because I remember some did last time. Alright, there it is. So you just look up the Stanford prison experiment. It goes for about half an hour. I want you to watch all of it. It's absolutely fascinating what happened. It's a little pixelated, but it's really, really good watch. So make sure you do, because again, there are 2 questions I want you guys to answer based off it. So again, it's looking at how social institutions affect us and how we affect and shape social institutions. And it's really interesting that the social constructs and roles that they put in play here and how it actually eventuated is fascinating. Now, last but not least, there is an extension activity. So they have made a movie of the experiment if you want to watch it. If you YouTube that clip there, you could probably find the trailer of the movie that they made to watch it. If you want to watch it that way instead, that's fine. But yeah, so you can watch that movie through your ClickView account. The email and password's there if you want. If that doesn't work, let me know and I'll see what I can sort out. But you don't have to do that. That's just a bit of an extension, but it's a really good movie to watch. And again, it's based off this experiment. So yeah, that's it for today. Bye.